And good morning, and welcome to the Skinny for Friday, October 17th. I'm Mitch Perry, the senior political reporter for the Florida Phoenix, joined by my colleague Ray Roa, the editor-in-chief of Creative Loafing newspaper, and by John Dingfelder, former Tampa City Council member and host of WMNF's The Down and Dirty, which we just listened to on WMNF. And for those of us who are just tuning in the radio right now, over the last hour, we just held a candidate forum between the two candidates running for the October 28th special election for the Tampa City Council District 5 seat between the Reverend Thomas Scott and Nia Young. District 5 is centered where we're sitting here right now in East Tampa, but includes fast-growing areas of downtown, Channelside/Water Street, Ybor City, and places like Seminole Heights, Tampa Heights, and Sulphur Springs. So we're going to talk about the race and the forum we just listened to with a group of concerned Tampa residents, but we're going to go beyond that and talk about not just this particular election, but also, there's another election a year and a half from now, what's really going on in the city of Tampa. And I want to make sure to have our listeners know that even if you're not in Tampa, Tampa's kind of like obviously the center of the Tampa Bay area for all our listeners listening throughout the area. But so I want you to be very involved with this and certainly call in 813-239-9663 in a few minutes, wherever you live, basically talk about your own issues you've got going on in your cities. And we've got a great panel joining us right now. We've got Robin Lockett. She's the regional director of Florida Rising. Stephanie Poynor, the president of Tampa Homeowners Association of Neighborhoods, or THAN. Valerie Smith, a Creative Loafing Tampa Bay contributor and the editor-in-chief of the Sapphic Sun. And Taryn Sabia, who is the assistant dean for research at USF's College of Design, Art, and Performance. And Ray, let's let you kick off the conversation here.
Yeah, for one, we want to thank our listeners last week too for putting us over the goal on the fundraising. The station as a whole went over, and that really means a lot. So thank you for your continued support, and we'll ask for it again here at sometime soon. We want to also remind you that voting in this election does begin on October 23rd, wraps on Sunday, October 26th. The early voting election day is Tuesday, October 28th. Yeah, so we want to welcome the calls here, 813-239-9663. Tell us about what you thought about what you heard there in the first hour on Down and Dirty, and just tell us about, your issues here in the city of Tampa. So when you take the call, make sure to tell Christine what you want to talk about so we can stage these calls properly. Let's get right into it here. We asked a lot of great questions. I want to go to one that Valerie's reporting led to. We asked him about Emmett Bucky Mitchell IV. We asked Thomas Scott, a controversial attorney is Mitchell IV, and his PAC's donated about $6,000 to Scott over the cycle. As Mitch pointed out, Mitchell is controversial because he had a role to play in purging many black voters off of the rolls in 2020.
2000.
I'm sorry.
The recount election.
That's right, the recount election. Thomas Scott said no clue who he was. Were you surprised by that, Mitch?
Was I? Yeah, I guess so. I mean, this guy, Bucky Mitchell, so he was the attorney for Catherine Harris, the Secretary of State at the time. And if some of our listeners, and I remember that was my first year covering, down here WMNF, it was the wildest election in history, right? The Bush v. Gore. And one of the big things that came out of that, and it really isn't, good reporting. Thank you for finding that out, Valerie, because that was a long time ago. But man, the issue about the felon list, and we still deal with this right now with Amendment 4, right? And felons getting the right to vote and all that, or not, got to pay fines and fees now, what have you. But we learned in the aftermath of the 2000 election, the super close 537 vote difference was that there was these lists of removing voters from the rolls because they were allegedly felons. Okay, you're not allowed to vote then, at that time, certainly at all if you were a felon. But there were a lot of mistakes with that. And a lot of people, probably democratically aligned voters were taken off the list, and many of them were black voters. And so, kudos to you defining that and insert that information. John Dingfelder, you want to say something?
Yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt, but Robin and I think, are the only two folks in this room who've run for office. And I can tell you, Mitch, that when you're running for office, okay, you're out asking for money. Obviously, you're out knocking on doors and doing everything, so staying on street corners and being an idiot, everything is required when you run for office.
Kissing babies.
But the reality is you're very busy and you do get contributions, and sometimes they come from PACs, and I have received PAC contributions. You typically don't go back and see who is that signature that started that PAC. You have to know who the PAC's money's coming from. In this case, came from a series of realtor organizations, which, as we know locally, is pretty much controlled by Andy Scaglione. And that's all fine and good. And I'm not saying anything pro or con to Andy or to Tom or anything else. But in regard to, holding the candidates' feet to the fire about who actually started that pack up in Tallahassee 10 years ago or whatever, I don't know if that's necessarily fair. Robin, you want to chime in on that?
So when I ran, to be honest, I didn't have.
You might not got any packs.
No, but I watched. I mean, I paid attention to the money that was coming in and who it was coming in from.
Oh.
And even once the idea or the identity of this person was brought to the forefront, hey, this is the person that blah, 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 I think my response would have been, I would have been more mindful of what my response was, that, hey, I don't know him, but, it would have brought caution to me that that person was in charge of causing all of these things, even back then, to bring, to bring caution to it.
Valerie, go ahead.
And I also think that it's worth noting that, yes, this was a realtors political association. It very well may be the case that Bucky Mitchell had nothing to do with the decision to send us funding.
Okay.
And I don't think it's necessarily has to be a candidate's job to go through every donation and see who it comes from. But at the same time, I think the question then is, why does this person think that this is the best candidate? So while the candidate may not have the answer to that question, I think it's a question that we should be asking. Why are so many realtors voting to donate $6,000 to Thomas Scott's campaign? And why does Nia Young have no political action committee contributions?
We'll go to Stephanie Poynor here in a minute, but I just wanted to do some disclosures real quick. Robin Lockett, Florida Rising, did contribute $1,000 to Nia Young's campaign. I know that Stephanie Poynor is a Nia Young supporter. Taryn, you do support Nia as well. And Valerie is the outsider living in St. Pete, gets to be the most objective one here. And then we disclosed in the first half of the show that the former councilman John Dingfelder has contributed to both campaigns because he likes to pitch in.
I'd like to point out that I've done extensive research on PACs, and it's not a rabbit hole. It's an ant farm. And to find out who gave what to whom is very, very difficult. So I always like to give some grace on that. But I think that's something that's important for most people to understand.
Go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, no, we've got Taryn. Taryn, I want to bring you in here, Taryn Sabia, because I worked with Taryn. We did a couple of debates. Oh, and this is going to be a segue. I want to bring this up right now, and then we can go forward, because I want to get all your thoughts about this. So Taryn and I worked on a debate last week at Tampa Heights. You're very involved, Taryn Sabia, with the Tampa Heights Civic Association, and we put on a very, I would dare say, entertaining debate last Thursday, but nobody's talking about that because there was an incident which happened afterwards, right? And that, of course, if you're, unless you're in a hole right now and you haven't read any news the last week, there was a former Tampa City Council candidate, a man who ran in this race, Elvis Piggott, who reportedly got into an altercation with someone and he brandished a gun. Okay,
I think the candidates had already left at that point.
Yeah.
Tom said he wasn't there. I don't believe that Nia was on site, but I'm not sure.
It was sort of the postscript after the debate.
What I wanted to ask the panel, and Taryn, I want to go with you first because you involved with that, creating that whole event. But I want to talk about leadership in the city right now, okay? And I'm glad we didn't bring this up during the debate because that candidate has gotten a lot of attention, or that former candidate has gotten a lot of attention the last week, where it should be focused on these two people running on October 28th. However, Elvis Piggott, he was charged, right? He was charged with aggravated, brandished a gun. This is the era of open carry now. He was charged with an aggravated assault with a deadly weapon and improper exhibition of a dangerous weapon by the Tampa police a few days ago. And these are serious charges, folks. Aggravated assault is a third-degree felony. You could get up to 5 years in prison, up to fines of up to $5,000. What I want to get your thoughts about it was this was a public event featuring two candidates running for the government of Tampa. Why haven't we heard anything from Mayor Jane Castor on this? Because this is not just an incident that happened in Ybor City on a Saturday night with a gun. This was a political event, a government event, a really scary event for a lot of people.
Yes.
And we haven't heard anything from our leadership in the city about maybe folks not bringing guns to political events, what have you. Why don't we start with Taryn Sapian?
But on the heels of violence at a political event in Utah.
Even more so than ever. You're right, John. Yeah, Taryn.
Yeah, I mean, it's surprising that leadership hasn't stepped up to denounce the violence at political forums. This was meant to be a forum that the community could come, engage, and we wanted it to be something that was different, where they could engage with candidates in a new way to really begin to understand some of the issues and the way in which they might actually be able to work with their city council member. Oftentimes, people are elected to council and you don't necessarily know how to approach them or the ways in which we engage with those elected bodies that represent our communities and our neighborhoods. So we wanted to create a venue that made it more comfortable for more people to engage. We were happy with the diversity of the group that was there. We got incredible feedback in terms of how people felt about the forum itself as it was going on. There was a live band. We wanted it to be something that people recognized as a place they could come and feel comfortable. So the fact that this incident took place afterwards was unbelievably shocking. And
tragic,
it was really tragic.
Absolutely.
I was about 20 feet away from the scuffle and then the eventual pulling of the gun, and it was frightening, and it caused an enormous amount of chaos. We did have armed security at the event, just as a safety precaution. We had it at the first forum that Tampa Heights hosted as well, and for the most part, they were helping people to their cars in the dark. Right, that was what we were anticipating. This was not anticipated at all, and there was the amount of fear in that civic space and in that room was immense. People running for the doors, people ducking under tables, behind columns, and huddling together. I mean, checking for their families. I grabbed my phone to text my husband to make sure he had the kids out of the building because both of mine were there.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Because we wanted them engaged, right? I was, 27 when I moved to Tampa. I got engaged in the city early in 2006. I've been an advocate in the community since then on a number of different things. I'm looking at John because I worked with John way back then, and my
We
kids
developed
have been,
the green ordinance together.
we
didn't
did. That's right. And the Committee on Sustainability that you had established back then. So having children involved in these things from an early age is really important so that they can learn what it is to be engaged in the leadership of your community and their civic responsibilities in these ways. So to have, that near experience, has really caused us a lot of reflection in terms of what does that mean and how do we come out strong in terms of denouncing violence and that type of fear in the community, especially when we were trying to do something much the opposite. So I would love our local leadership to speak up.
Yeah, Robin, you were there. But Stephanie and Robin were also at the event.
Yes, I was there, and it was disappointing. And I think that I didn't know your children were there. And you find out now, or you see now that parents are bringing their kids out to be, from the small to grow into being engaged and so forth. It was a difficult and surprising and disappointing incident. It really was. And I was in shock. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
And it was chaotic there, but I was in shock and I was very, very disappointed. I didn't even recognize that it was I knew it was a gun, but in my mind, it wasn't processing as a gun. And I was looking, I was like, is that a gun?
Yeah.
I just couldn't believe it.
Stephanie, were you there when that incident happened?
I was already in the car and people came running out. But my disposition about this, and this is the most disappointing part, is that the person who was pulling a gun is the person who claims to be a leader and wants to guide young people to do the right thing.
Yeah.
And when you do that, the question that we all have to ask ourselves and ask our community is, how long is it going to be before a kid says to his parent or his lawyer, well, I saw Pastor do it, so I thought it was okay.
Yeah.
And at that point, he had the resolve not to use it and put it away. But does that mean that the 13 to 23-year-old young men out there who are listening to it on Facebook Live are not going to take action? No.
And it can't be
doesn't.
identified as normal.
No, it's not normal.
So as the lawyer in the crowd, I will remind everybody that he has pending, felony charges pending,
Yeah.
and he deserves a right to a fair trial, and
Yeah,
hopefully he'll get it. And he claims it was self-defense, that sort of thing. I would agree with everybody here. Don't bring a gun. Don't exercise this open carry thing to a public debate, to a debate where children are going to be, to a community. We invite the community. Don't bring your gun. Leave it in the car if you're that concerned about your safety. But he's talking about self-defense and everything else. He's going to have a jury. Right. That jury needs to have an open mind and go from there.
You're absolutely right. And again, we wanted to set that up for the listeners here. It's 11:21. You're listening to Skinny here on WMNF 88.5 FM. Mitch, you just heard the voice of John Dingfelder from the Down and Dirty, who's joining us here on the Skinny. Mitch Perry, Ray Roa, and our guests, Robin Lockett, Stephanie Poynor, Taryn Sabia, and Valerie Smith. And we are talking about the Tampa City, elections, which are coming up in a week and a half. The special election in District 5, which we did the debate between Nia Young and Thomas Scott. And we're going to talk about more issues going on in Tampa. One last thing about this issue, though, is that we are now in the era of open carry, right? This is something that is a major issue, policy issue change in the state of Florida that pretty much happened overnight because, in fact, it was a judicial decision that was done about a month or so ago. This has been a raging argument. Florida's interesting because Florida is known as the gun-shy state and a very pro-Second Amendment state, and yet we've been on the minority of states, along with the most liberal states in the country. I'm talking about California, New York, Illinois, Connecticut, who has not allowed for open carry. And then there was a judicial decision made a few months ago, or 6 weeks ago maybe, and then our Attorney General, James Uthmeyer, said, you know what, I believe, an open carry, and so we're not going to fight it, and we're going to allow it to happen. So what you're seeing in real time right now, and everybody talks about Publix, right? There was a story about Publix last week because they have basically said we're okay with this. But every business, nonprofit, building like WMNF has the right, if they don't want to have a gun in their office, what have you, to say that and to put signage outside. I know Rick Fernandez, Taryn, said afterwards, I think he was like, I can see why he wouldn't think of this. We thought about a lot of things with this debate last Thursday. Yeah. That was not one of them.
Rick Fernandez, the president of the Tampa Heights Civic Association, said, in hindsight now, he's probably going to have metal detectors and do that. Never thought he would, but here he is. And I know he takes a lot of responsibility, and I know that he's carrying that.
But I think the policy, so I think some places like the Tampa Heights Civic Association maybe just needs to put like a sign up there now. This is not, yes, we have open carry, but we don't allow it in this facility because that is part of the law as well, is that any private entity can say, if we don't want it in here, you can't bring it in.
But there's a difference between open carry and concealed carry, right? So what happened Thursday was not open carry because it was concealed.
Well, let's see here. The fact is that it was brandishing a gun. So there you go. But the idea is, it's an interesting question because open carry, theoretically, yes, concealed carry, you can still hit a handgun, which is what I believe he had, right? I was not there, I should say. I had left the event at that point. But concealed, it just opens up a whole lot. Yes, we have had concealed or permitless carry, as the advocates called it a couple years ago. And really, what the difference with that is you don't have to go get a permit anymore, really. In terms of carrying that with you. But yes, open carry though, it's a new world though, and I think that again, it's more incumbent on businesses and establishments to set their rules down about what they believe in it. Because again, Publix has been asked and say like we're good with this, and so people can make their minds up as consumers whether they want to go there.
But as you said, business can make a mind. Apparently, Walmart and some others have said no.
Yeah,
and so my wife and I, Lynn Martin Dingfelder and I, have decided we're not going to shop at Publix anymore.
I know, and I like Publix, but
I like Publix too, and it's convenient.
Yeah,
I will say this: some
like to Aldi, and we're going to go to Walmart, and I'm sorry, Publix.
I will say that some of my liberal friends, this is like the fourth time I've heard them say they're not going to Publix, though. Yeah. Okay, after like the incident a couple years ago,
everybody knows that nobody can resist a pub sub. So
right, no, because they are associated with giving a lot of money to a lot of politicians, mostly Republicans, and in fact, Julie Jenkins is not Julie. I'm sorry, wrong name. That is our friend.
The Jenkins family. Yeah.
The Jenkins family is involved in Publix, and who's also very much funds right-wing causes, including January 6th.
Julie Jenkins would like to think she's part of the Publix.
But anyway, let's move on. Let's talk about Tampa.
Yeah. Let me.
No, I was just wondering about the Sulphur Springs issue that we talked about last hour. I thought that was a really good discussion. I think, Mitch, you started with it. Should Sulphur Springs be a CRA? Should Sulphur Springs be the host to a new baseball area? And then I brought up the fact about any concerns about gentrification. Is that something we want to spin around the room?
Yeah, I think so too. And you know, it's interesting on Garrett Greco's podcast, the Tampa Bay Developer Podcast, he pulled up a map and he said, would you, like to see some high density development here around the theater, around the Morrisound studios? So it was interesting to hear that. One thing that I didn't get to ask them was, at the end of the day, whether what you think is right or wrong, right? Sometimes when we listen to Pastor Scott, it feels a little pastoral, right? I mean, he's been around for a long time. That's kind of how he talks to people. He's got a church, man. You got to lead people, right? But I didn't get to ask them whether or not, if the community just overwhelmingly said, we don't want a stadium here, or we don't want this kind of development, or the other way, yes, we want it, and we do want this stuff, and it went against what you felt personally, would you be willing to say, hey, this is what the community wants, this is not, about
well, it's
what I
interesting
want?
because Thomas Scott did say he would vote no on that. He would vote no on that Ferris wheel because the community in Channelside and Water Street didn't want it. He never said how he felt about it personally,
Right.
but he did indicate that the community was against it. He'd vote against because that is part of District 5.
But yeah, he also, in that same, with the question prior to that, just referring back to Ray around the stadium, he didn't. Because if Naya brought up, hey, if the community, we have to go out to the community, find out what the community wants, blah, blah, blah. And he didn't take a stand on. He didn't. He said the traffic is outlined for that area is outlined for traffic with Nebraska and so forth. So he was making an argument that it possibly can happen.
So how do you feel about the gentrification issue?
I think gentrification is and then he
because
said,
especially in regard to renters.
100%, because that area is full of renters. Just the idea that he says, hey, it's across the street. No, renters are there. They're already taking advantage of it because you have a whole lot of slumlords there. But those owners of those properties are going to sell those properties. So even the plan that they have outlined, right? Those business owners that are there, they're not involved in it. The community is involved in it, but it's more businesses that own those properties than homeowners.
And that's the key
and that's
right
the
there.
problem.
That's the key right there. You will get almost no community outreach for an HCC stadium because there's no housing really within the 300 feet notification area for the HCC property. Up there in Sulphur Springs, you'll see some communications. But one of the things we have to remember is we have 8 CRAs. I read a letter last week that said Channelside only has 1.2% of their land still available for redevelopment. Why is it still a CRA?
Yeah.
Why? Why is it still holding all those funds hostage? If that funding was moved back into the general fund where it belongs, then we would have plenty of time. We would have plenty of money to help the folks in Sulphur Springs.
Did they respond to that, Mitch? One of you asked that.
Yeah,
question.
I did ask the question because that has been Carlson brought it up a couple years ago because we know Water Street is thriving, right? The Channelside area is thriving. There's still a CRA. It doesn't make sense. Valerie, do you want to say something?
Oh yeah, I just think that as far as the issue of gentrification goes, if you look at who does the gentrifying and you look at who donates to each campaign, I think that you find that in the records, you see 57% of Thomas Scott's donations coming from those developers, those real estate professionals. And I can't say that someone who has donations primarily from individuals with a few developers in the mix, but mostly from individuals, I think it's 12% of her money came from people in the development real estate business. I would say that one of these candidates is at least funded by people who want to gentrify the area, which makes me think that there is some reason they think that Thomas Scott would be a better ally to them than Nia Young.
By the way, that was the voice of Valerie Smith as a contributor to Creative Loafing. We are talking about issues about the city of Tampa right now. We appreciate your contribution. If you want to call in, 813-239-9663. Can you send us an email at dj@wmnf.org. Again, we've got Stephanie Poynor here. Stephanie, great to have you on the show here. Right? Stephanie is the president of the Tampa Homeowners Association of Neighborhoods, THAN. How long have you been the president of that now?
21, 22, I'm not sure.
Oh, the last
It
3
all
years or
runs
so.
together.
Well, you are a prominent. People know anything about Tampa know that you were a prominent activist. You're prominent in city council, and I got to say something to you because you've never been on the show. I'm so happy to have you on here. I don't really cover Tampa anymore in government. I cover state government, but I do watch Tampa City Council on occasion. Anyway, a year and a half ago, former Mayor Bob Buckhorn, who may be running again, as we all know, to run for mayor. I guess he's not a fan of yours, and I say that because I said no. I said
The feeling is certainly mutual.
yeah. Well, I said I saw him. This is when Joe Biden was in town and Bob was there, and I said, Bob, we'd love to get you on the skinny. We haven't had you. I haven't had on the WMNF for a while, and he was like, well, no, I'm not sure about that. And I was really, quite frankly, disappointed because I love talking
I got
to
the same response for the down and
Is that
dirty.
right? Yeah. And, but he mentioned, of all people, he mentioned Stephanie Poynter's name. I'm like, Stephanie Poynter is not like has never been on my show. Okay, maybe you associate like activism with WMNF. I mean, I wasn't really sure the connection there, but he is on your mind. Okay, when I asked him a year and a half ago to be on the skinny.
It's hilarious. I'm not a big fan of Bob's, mainly because Bob has refused to raise fees for the city of Tampa. He was very, very vocal about it.
Now, what kind of fees, though? What are we talking about?
Impact fees. Every single solitary fee in the city. Fees for land use, fees for land development, fees for permits, you name it. We are paying out of our own personal pockets, out of the citizens' pockets for land development changes. So if it costs the city $3,000 to process a claim, we are charging them $1,000. Well, who's paying for the rest of it? Everybody who's sitting here who lives in the city.
I just want
what do you say? Oh, sorry, John. What do you say to Thomas Scott's argument, though, that even if you raise the impact fees, the developer is going to pass that on to the homeowner anyway?
That's not my problem. I shouldn't have to pay the difference, and you shouldn't have to pay, and Robin shouldn't have to. We should not have to pay those fees. And the perfect example is the impact fees that are coming up 2 days after this election. I'm very concerned about the conversation that went on there. There's a vote on the impact fees, the mobility impact fees, 2 days after this election.
The first time in years, right? Decades.
Right. Yes. Exactly. Currently, our impact fees for a single-family home in the city of Tampa are $1,277. The county charges $9,300 for the exact same fees, because we have not raised those fees since 1986, and people wonder why we have potholes big enough to swallow a smart car.
And Taryn, in regard to affordable housing, I believe there are methods, there are ways to subsidize affordable housing or to exempt affordable housing from some of those fees. It's a little bit tricky because of all the legalities, but I believe I'm correct. I got the microphone. I just wanted to come back to this issue about campaign financing. Okay, because if somebody goes back and looks at my campaign finances, 2019, 2007, okay, I got developers' money and I got attorneys' money, probably because they looked at me as the incumbent and they had a feeling I was going to win. But I was never a friend of the developers. I took their money. And I would always be fair and friendly, I believe. Okay, but many times they would not get my vote. I think that's what Tom Scott said when he was in there. So I just want to, I'm not defending Tom Scott, but I just want to remind everybody, I think that's what he said, is just because I take their money doesn't mean they're always going to get my vote. Depends on the person.
Go ahead, Robin.
But I think there's a difference also with them, you being beholden to them. Sit up there quite often on council, that you will not take a vote for the community or or provide the right vote because you have made possible promises or agreements. It could have been 10 years ago and you're still beholden to them. So, but I think that people can take money from different entities or people and still do the right thing, right? Sometimes people want to be on your right side. Right. So I think it's if history shows that you side with wrong and you're not taking responsibility and working for the community, then that question goes into your mind. Who's giving you money? Yeah. If it's identified as, I've heard, dark money, then who's giving you money? And, you're going to do the wrong thing.
And don't get me wrong. I think money is horrible in politics. I really do. One of the things that Sarasota did many years ago, City Sarasota, I don't know if it's still there, but they, as a local community in their charter, reduced contributions to $100 maximum. Instead of $500 or $1,000, they reduced it to $100 maximum per individual, per company, and leveled the playing field. Okay, when I was on city council back in the, back 2 terms ago, I made the motion to City of Tampa to modify our charter to do $100, and I got a second from Linda Salsena, and then the motion died at that point, and it failed and fizzled away 2 to 5. But because the incumbents don't want that. The incumbents like the benefit of the money. But anyway, that's
But
all I
even with
got.
impact fees, we're talking about impact fees. They will not take a vote on it because of developers.
Well, and the administration won't push those impact fees very hard because this administration gets a lot of money from developers too.
Yes, I agree. And you know what? All development is not bad.
Correct.
I mean, I love it when somebody comes to me with something I can support.
Yeah.
I love being able to support something that's going to be good for our community. The problem is that when people are trying to do shady stuff, and I have lots of land use attorneys who call me and talk to me about stuff, and we work through these things together, and we come through with a better product in the end. But the problem is when people are trying to do shady stuff on the side and not be forthcoming. One of my very favorite ones is the Rome Yard. Why is it still vacant?
Right.
They approved it in 2021. Were you still on council?
You were
I don't know.
around council.
I think
When
so.
they started it, yeah.
Yeah. So it was approved
Right,
then,
right.
and it's still a vacant lot.
Yes, you're talking about a vacant lot used to house a lot of the city trucks and everything over there right by Ricks on the River. But
Yeah.
technically West Tampa, you can see downtown, you can see Blake High School.
The process was very shady in regard to who they picked
And
to
their
be
feet
the
have been to
developer.
yes, and we reported a little
Displaced
bit
the
on
Yellow
that, talking
Jackets.
about the way that
Yep.
the criteria changed for the proposals. I know there was an Invictus kind of protest, I think, between the developers, ended up going to related, and we know that question is there. I think we're going to take a phone call here.
Yeah.
And if you'll hold
Why don't we do that? We've got Bishop Michelle Patty, calling in. Michelle, good morning. Wait, sure.
Good morning. And I'd like to, first of all, say thank you to the panel. You all are doing a great work with getting things out and getting things clear. But I just want to speak on the issue of when the gun was pulled. That what's most disturbing for me is that Bishop Scott has not denounced this, and Elvis Pickett is one of his supporters. I'm looking at the Florida Sentinel Bulletin that he's in the paper. And I don't know if you all are aware that the victim's mother, who's 81 years old, that her address and name was put out in Facebook by a Valerie Bullitt, who's on Bishop Scott campaign report that he's paying her as a canvasser. So these people are intertwined, yet Ms. Young came out the very next day, clearly denounced what has taken place, but we have not heard it from Bishop Scott. So I don't know if he said it on your program, because I have not seen it or written or heard from in the community.
I can speak to that. I talked directly to Bishop Scott the next day, and I don't think he issued an official statement, but he did tell me, one, he wasn't there, and he called it a very unfortunate incident. And at the time that warrant wasn't out yet, he did say that he's waiting for the investigation. So that's all, what I can say to that.
And Mitch, I think we need to be careful with phone calls to. I don't know. I love Michelle Patty, but I don't want this to get into the phone calls from this supporter of this candidate or this supporter of that candidate.
I think that was fair. I want to pivot a little bit. Thank you, Michelle. Oh, go ahead.
One last thing.
I live in Brandon, so I can't vote for either person, but as a pastor, as a mother and a grandmother who has a son and a grandson that was killed because of gun violence, and Ms. Stephanie Poynor, she and I don't agree on a lot, but I have to agree with her about these young people pulling guns. And you cannot negate the fact that he went home and went to bed. We've had this been all over the media. It's nothing, no harm to just say, look, I don't support gun violence. Right. Okay?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
that's what I'm saying.
Thank you.
And that has not been done.
Thank you.
And Michelle, I don't mean anything by it. I apologize if there was any insult. But I'm just saying, as a legitimate show, we need to be careful on
and we are taking your calls. 813-239-9663. I want to remind you, you're listening to The Skinny here on WMNF Tampa. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. We are listening to WMNF Tampa. We're talking discussion about Tampa issues. I want, before the last thing about the statement, she's correct, though. Ray, you're right. You talked to Tom Scott directly. And look, we didn't bring it up, and I'm glad we didn't bring it up during the debate, but, it is a relevant issue. Naya did release a statement, and Tom Scott did not. That's all I think she was saying.
Correct.
But
Correct.
anyway, so let's leave it there. Let's move on. So what are we doing? It's 11:40 right now.
Yeah, we have, let's see. So we have Robin Lockett is here. She's the regional director of Florida Rising. John Dingfelder next to her, former Tampa City Councilman, host of Down and Dirty, which did host that on-air debate for us. Valerie Smith, editor-in-chief of the Sapphic Sun, based in St. Petersburg, also a creative Loafing Tampa Bay reporter. Taryn Sabia is here, an urban designer, assistant dean for research there at USF, and Stephanie Poynor, president of THAN, the Tampa Homeowners Association of Neighborhoods. Taryn, I want to ask you a question. I don't know if we got to it on our show. I don't know if you've seen it in your forms, but this seat, it's District 5. Those are the voters, but they make a lot of citywide decisions. Taryn, you're somebody who thinks a lot about the space around us, the way that the city is designed, the way that we get around our city. And I'm curious for you in this almost 5 months of this election season, have you heard enough conversation about that? From your perspective, how you view the city and what you'd like to see. Have you heard that from them? And, do you feel like, any one of those candidates has had good ideas about that?
So it's a great question, because the way in which we move about the city and the way in which we overall design and place things, right? Where everything goes, where what we use is in relation to where we live. And the comp plan is actually being updated right now. And I think that it's a really important topic. I do know that Naya has talked a lot about the comp plan update and looking at supporting the idea of the corridors and the way that the city is approaching corridor development within the comp plan. And so I know that she's been trying to really get more information about that and what that might look like in the future. What I will say is that the issues we are dealing with today, the issues of housing, the issues of lacking transit and traffic congestion, the issues that our small businesses are facing in terms of being able to develop with well-executed, timely permitting processes. These are all things that started 20 years ago. These are because of a lack of good decision making and good planning that needed to happen 20 years ago. And even 10 years ago, right? Now we're doubling down because now we have major issues on resilience. That was a conversation that John Dingfelder started about 20 years ago, right? And so those things not being pushed forward in a future thinking manner have really led us to the challenges that we have right now. This is why, for me, seeing leadership really focus on not just fixing stuff today, but thinking about how we are able to make decisions that are going to set us better up in the future that also address those issues as soon as possible. And I think that that is where we should really be focusing. We do need more density in places of the city. It's not meant for every place in the city, but there are areas that we can densify to create more livable, walkable, affordable communities within our infrastructure that is existing. We can also ensure that those new developments are resilient. We can plan for better resilience around those topics. A number of times, the stormwater ponds and facilities in East Tampa have been brought up. There's about 22 of them. No one's actually talked about the number, but that's about how many there are. And they are not bringing the community up. Right? They could do so much more in terms of the service they provide for both stormwater resilience, but also much needed park spaces, open space. They help cool our communities. I did a heat resilience playbook with the city. We looked at East Tampa in terms of heat and what extreme heat is doing across the city of Tampa and the health risks that we see because of it. And so when we start to put all these things together, we can really make it work. And I think it's important to understand that the decisions that are made by council, especially related to zoning, don't just impact us on the day it's made and for the next year, but it's a 20-year outlook that they have to have.
That's exactly right.
So, Stephanie, you're very involved in these zoning decisions. Taryn, you bring up great points. When you make these decisions, there's always a yin and a yang. There's always a conflict, because on the one, and I used to deal with this. On the one hand, I totally believe in redeveloping our corridors to be more dense. On the one hand, it's a good thought in the abstract. But what we find is, let's say along Kennedy Boulevard or even MLK or Hillsborough or whatever, once you get a block out, a block away from that main corridor, now you're in just traditional single family homes. And if somebody wants to put a 6-story, building right there on Hillsborough Avenue, it's going to be butt up against that single family home where somebody's lived and raised their family or what have you. And that's where the tension arises, Stephanie.
Taryn made some really, really good points about how this is a 20-year-old problem. And we have to, Marcus Garvey said, we have to know the roots of our tree in order to be able to continue to grow. And she's right. We didn't have a planning department until 2020, but yet our planning department now has had an interim head for a year and a half now, instead of being the actual head. And that was because Castor came in and said, we need to have a planning department, but yet they're not, their hands are tied.
But how do you address this tension between good planning, like Taryn said, but also good neighborhood protection, like you advocate?
But you can do both.
Yeah.
Both can absolutely be done. And I am a big believer in, we need to lean in on our transportation as much as anything, because bottom line is 23% of our citizens' salary goes to transportation here. And so if we can lean in on getting public transit to be more important and get folks on the bus or on something else besides paying for a car payment and insurance here, then we can start chipping away at the housing issues, because people are going to have more money in their pocket. If they don't have to spend $500 a month on a car, they can spend $500 additional on housing.
So, and John, just to address the issue that you brought up, right? The 6-story building next to the single family house. There are smart design mechanisms that we can use to create buffering
100%.
Between those developments. And
100%.
when you talk to communities and you engage with them and you ask them about their ability to walk places or bike places or get to places easily, that is something you overwhelmingly hear positive responses to. They want to do it, right? I've spoken to the community so many times across the city, across the county, related to these types of development issues. When you look at the studies from AARP, the biggest thing that you see is the relationship between our aging populations and our young populations wanting the same thing.
Right.
They want walkable urbanism. It also helps create affordability, and Stephanie hit on it really well, talking about the cost of transportation. Our housing costs are also high. We've got to reduce somewhere, and likely in both places. And being able to have that 6-story building and that single family neighborhood can work. We just have to design it right. And the most important thing, whenever you're on the street, whenever you're walking, and you've probably heard me say this in council before, is the first 18 feet. How a building addresses its sidewalk from the ground up 18 feet is what we experience as pedestrians. It's the most critical part of design, and how that building touches is the thing we should be focusing on the most. Not so much its height. We don't perceive it.
Robin.
So that everything sounds lovely, right? But the walkable communities now are where blacks are being pushed out, families are being pushed out, right? So now they're being pushed out to the county, where there are no transport. They're taking transportation. They're threatening to take transportation away, and there's no walkable communities. So now again, there is a total disadvantage, and things are not equal, because the communities now, the city of Tampa, people can afford to stay here and enjoy the walkable, everything that's being outlined in the city of Tampa now. Residents that have been living here all their lives have to find somewhere else to live. And that's the unfair part.
We are, again, if you're just tuning in right now, you're listening to Skinny here on WMNF. It's 11:50 right now. We're having a discussion about issues going on in the city of Tampa. We've also asked for your solicitation, your calls coming in right now. So we want to hear from some of our listeners right now. Again, Just want to remind the listeners that was just the voice of Robin Lockett. She's the regional director of Florida Rising. We've also got Stephanie Poynor from THAN, the neighborhood association here in Tampa. We've also got Taryn Sabia from the USF, and also Valerie Smith, a contributor to Creative Loafing, along with the hosts here, Mitch Perry, Ray Roa, and John Dingfelder. And DeAndre, you want to talk about light rail, something that's like an idea that's kind of come and gone in the Tampa Bay area. DeAndre.
Right. I heard the term corridors earlier, so I didn't know if the person who was speaking on that was reflecting on light rail or expansion of suburban to urban sprawl. But so that's what I was wanting to say. It's like 20 years ago, that was when we should have been talking about it, but it was supplanted. And of course, I think Rick Scott was a part of a lot of that. Another prominent Republican who was also a governor, is now senator of the state of Florida, one of the senators of the state of Florida. But one thing I also wanted to interject, being a person from downtown Tampa and having a hard time in the age of 40 planting their roots, one thing that I find myself interested in, and I kind of anecdotally but still believe is pretty big, is people wanting more space to maybe farm on that property, take up a craft and carpentry and things like that. And that requires a higher and higher and higher income as time elapses. And that doesn't necessarily correspond with, growing the area vertical for everyone, I just wanted to put that out there, but thank you.
Thank you, DeAndre. Any thoughts there?
Taryn, want to clarify what we mean by corridors?
I would love to. So, DeAndre, thank you. And you are absolutely right that conversation needed to take place 20 years ago. And in fact, it did. And it even started 20 years before that. Yep. And it's a conversation that we need to keep pushing on, because we're not going to build ourselves out of it, and we're not going to add enough lanes on roadways to ever fix it. So having multimodal systems is critical. The corridors that I was talking about are different types of commercial corridors that are identified in the comp plan. And those corridors are allowing for density bonuses and other mechanisms to help densify where you see a lot of your commercial activity. Some of those are going to become what they are calling transit-ready corridors, so corridors that could support transit in the future. So they are trying to be future thinking in terms of the comprehensive plan, and that is the role of the comprehensive plan.
And the transit could be bus or BRT, bus rapid transit, or something more,
or it could
train-like.
be autonomous technologies. Yeah. It could be a number of things. There's a number of things that we really should be looking into. It was the early 2000s when the county commission first turned down federal funding for transit and did not allow the voters to vote on it.
Well, let's go back to 1990 when County Commissioner Ed Taranchik brought a little train into town and showed everybody how that type of mass transit could work up and down the existing rail corridor. So that's 35 years ago.
You had the committee of 1999. Remember that in 99? Which I got here in the year 2000, but I heard all about it when I first moved here into Tampa in 2000 because of 99. Were you remember that, Taryn?
So I do. I know its history. So I think it was 1997 that the pilot project was actually implemented, that Ed Taranchik had worked on putting what was a hybrid train on the existing CSX tracks. It was wildly popular for about 3 weeks. And it was one of the things that helped spark the plan that was done between 2000 to 2002 with the then MPO and the Planning Commission. We were first on the list for federal funding. That funding was turned down by the county commission at that time. And the city that got that money is the city of Charlotte, North Carolina. And they have a booming downtown with an unbelievable light rail system. They have a stadium in downtown, among other things, and have seen incredible development that now services not only their downtown, but all of their surrounding neighborhoods.
Of course, the history of this area I again coming here in 2000 and seeing the push that led to the 2010 Moving Hillsborough Forward initiative, which was announced, I think, in 2007, 2008 by Pam Iorio, who everybody cheered at the time, who really wanted this to happen. Like, yay, we're going to have the opportunity. As we all know, who were here at the time, that referendum went down to smashing defeat. Then in 2014, you had Panelists with Greenlight Panelists, their version of light rail, that also went smashing down. The Tea Party, which got really active in that era, was really instrumental in bringing those things down. And now nobody talks
But
about.
how about the
light
one
rail.
that passed? What year was that?
That was 2018.
2018.
The sales
It
tax.
passed, and the
Right.
county, Hillsborough County, finally came around and passed it, and then it got struck down.
And that would have been
by
what,
the
more
courts.
funding for Hart, right? We're not talking about light rail at that point, though. In 2018, we're talking about more funding for.
It could have been toward any services that Hart would provide.
Yeah.
Right. But also it had other infrastructures included in that tax for transportation.
And as you brought up, Robin, excuse me, Taryn, but as you brought up, Robin, there is a proposal, he has not put in bill form yet, by Michael Owen, a representative from Hillsborough County, about talking about basically making Hart only for Tampa, as it were. And I talked to Michael, and I don't know if I have the sound still, because I didn't write it up at the time, because he said, everybody's criticizing me, but they don't really know what's going on with this thing. And so he hasn't filed the bill even as of yet. He's going to soon. Obviously, the legislature session begins in January. But he said this is actually going to be a boost for Tampa, because he says actually they're going to be able to do things that they really don't have. But they would be basically paying for it itself.
So what's his point on eliminating buses in the county?
That
People are moving.
there's less of a need for it there. That there will still be some service there, but it's been broad strokes what has been announced so far. We're going to know much more about it very soon, and we'll definitely talk about it in this program
For sure. And we got about 2 minutes left here on the Skinny. You're listening to WMNF Tampa this afternoon. You're in the second half of it is the last 2-hour special regarding the Tampa City Council District 5 special election. Early voting opens on the 23rd. It's going to run all the way through Sunday. I can take a day off on Monday for Craig Latimer, and then on Tuesday, October 28th, they're going to wrap up with Election Day. I want to finish with Val.
I just wanted to stress, we have a second or two, that we're talking Tampa, but these issues really are transcendent. These issues definitely are across the Bay, Valerie. And they impact everybody in the Bay Area. If we have, because everybody's driving through Tampa or driving through Hillsborough, no matter where you live at some point in time. And then the urban sprawl issues are going out to Polk County and to Pasco and to Hernando, et cetera.
Yeah.
So that's impacting you too.
Yeah.
So anyway, we appreciate you listening on these Tampa-centric issues, but these are really Bay Area issues.
And Valerie, in 30 seconds, what can you say about what the reporting has left for this race here in this short window? Do you see yourself filing another story about this? What a big question for you.
Well, I think I'd like to file a quick story about everything we talked about today. With the money, does it mean anything what the money says? That Nia Young is more grassroots, that Thomas Scott has more big contributors, more money, fewer donors. So I think that really everyone's given some incredible input today as to what that means for the people of the district. And I just want to file that in a print story that we can send to all of them so everyone in the district can make an educated decision at the ballot.
Are you happy to not be voting in this one and watching it from the sidelines?
It's kind of fun to just be a spectator. I'm sorry for everyone in District 5 who has to make a decision. I hate making decisions.
That was the voice of Valerie Smith, editor-in-chief of Sapphic Sun, contributor to Creative Loafing Tampa Bay, joined here in studio with Stephanie Poynor, president of Tampa Homeowners Association of Neighborhoods, the all-powerful fan. Karen Sabia from the University of South Florida, urban designer, assistant dean for research in the College of Design, Art, and Performance. Robin Lockett is here, the regional director of Florida Rising. My name is Ray Roa. I'm joined by my co-host, Mitch Perry, senior reporter at the Florida Phoenix, headed back up to Tallahassee soon. Sadly, we're going to miss you, Mitch, in the studio.
Hey, you got me for 2.5 more months. And by the way, I know we said this at the beginning of the show, but we really want to thank our listeners, because last week they really came in strong for us. We had the big fundraiser, which apparently did very well for MNF. And so thank you to the listeners out there, because as we've told you a million times now, no government funding anymore. So it's pretty much 100%.
Be a hairy time for this station for a few years at the very least.
Yeah, no, that's not coming back anytime soon.
Yeah, John Dingfelder is here too. Thank you so much for hanging out and opening the airwaves on Down and Dirty from 10 to 11.
It's been great working with you guys.
Thomas Scott, Nia Young, thank you for coming on the air. We know you're at Tiger Bay right now. Skip Sassy's on the board for us here today. And we also have Christine on the phones. Thank you very much. I see E-Love in Studio One getting art in your ear ready. Please stay tuned to WMNF Tampa. If you're registered, please please vote.
Please vote.
So
Yes.
yeah, I've really enjoyed working with you guys, collaborating as we heard last hour, collaborating with you guys. You guys are the ultimate professionals. You know, I'm an attorney and a journalist wannabe, but you guys are great journalists, and we appreciate all that you do, not only for the station, for the community, for your various other news outlets, Creative Loafing, Mitch, what's
Florida Phoenix.
Huh?
Florida Phoenix.
Florida Phoenix online.
Yeah.
And you guys, you know, do a fantastic job, and we appreciate, ladies, we appreciate you, and you know, coming in and giving us your wisdom and your wise.
And if one of you decides to run for office, you better come announce it on the show first.
That's it.
Thank you so much. We'll see you next week.